I implement by conviction the golden rules of piano touch playing for my students, or the individualities in their approach of the keyboard sculpting the touch, the legato by the finger and not by the pedal, the substitution of fingers in order to play several voices at the same time with the same hand, and then possibly voice them so that you bring out in chiaroscuro, voicing one more than the other and following it. In other words, hearing, feeling, touching, sculpting the sound with the finger, and therefore the position of the palm that supports the articulation through the knuckles that are visible, and the freedom of the wrist and the arm so that you don't have tension on the tendon, and so that you can express yourself musically. Either the music sings or dances or prays or represents the different elements of human experience, from spiritual elevation to earthy enjoyment. You can translate all this through your pianistic touch, the quality of the touch, signature touch, almost as if it's the voice of a tenor or a soprano whom you like to hear, and you recognize them because their voice is their body, their embodiment really of their voice. And the same can be said even if the instruments for piano are made in industrial quantity, that when different pianists touch the same instrument, they seem to tame it in a certain way that it sings in a way that you've never heard it with another, even in the same piece when you sit in a jury of a competition, as I do often. How come the sound of the instrument changes from a pianist to another, even in the same pieces, comparing comparables, which is the purpose, I guess, of competitions, which is not necessarily bringing out the authenticity of the individuality that would drive each artist's approach to the touch, and therefore to the phrasing, to the organization of the line, of the tempo, the length of sound, and the decay of the note before the next, or how to repeat melodically a note within the resonance. These subtleties were appreciated in the past because it was the golden standard of technique. You appreciated the touch of Horowitz, of Rubinstein, the sense of style of Arrau or of Gilels and Richter, and how they played and approached this and that famous piece that many others approached as well, but not necessarily by an, let's say, very striking difference like Glenn Gould very often. Not provocatively per se, because I think it was a deep-rooted conviction in him, the way he heard music, but it was different from the way others heard it when they played it. So people easily considered it eccentric, but I think it was its very honest expression. And when you hear a recording by Gould, you recognize right away the tone. It's a membrane, vibrating membrane of the salt with the finger, and the eye having read the score, and the finger touching the keys, and how you bathe it in tasteful pedaling and a little bit of seasoned rubato, and how much is too much, how much is not enough in the sauce making. It's almost like a cooking by tasting. And then you can disagree and say, I hate this way or prefer that way, but at least there is a way. They don't want to take the finger substitution route to finger legato, the melodic line, if they have to have a secondary voice. They prefer to do 5-5-5 for the notes with the pedal. And the acoustics, the good pianos, the recording engineers make it all so glamorous, and it is. But in daily practice for students, in practice room, in classrooms, in lessons, or in performances, they don't hear that. And when they listen to the recordings that they want to emulate by, I guess, desire to reach this level, they bypass this finger legato by using the pedal legato. And it's so successful with some of the pianists who today are famous. And I don't say that at all critically. I think it's because the audiences, the exercised awareness of the audiences is not taught to expect it. And therefore doesn't know, you cannot miss what you don't know you don't have. Because most of the pianists like Dino Lipati, who died in 1950 at 35, even recorded in mono, not even stereo, that is digital for the quality of the sound. Already when he plays the diminuendo of his D minor Bach concerto, which I'll never be able to do like him. But this very section, the day I heard it, I was probably a young, perhaps teenager yet. Oh my God, I was mesmerized by that continuum of dropping, rising, holding, hoping, and then accepting, and then endlessly at the low register, finally accepting. And perhaps I put too much into it, and it's not necessarily more than a transition between two sections in a piece, objectively said. And I don't know what it meant for him when he played it, but I know what it meant for me when I heard him play. The technique is to express their artistry, and the artistry to express something uplifting, and to have something uplifting is to search for it within yourself, lifelong search. Even with successes, you can always rethink what it means and how you approach it, and not because you have to, but because you feel like there is so much layers to all of this that you serve, the music, the texture, the meaning that it is to you, that perhaps changes with the seasons of life. And it's a wonderful opportunity to translate this in the technique that I help the students acquire to express what it means to them, not at all what it meant to me. Perhaps, but not always, at least not willingly, in a sense of play it like me, I like it like that. That is, I have to give at least a minimum of explanation how I understand the pulse, the phrasing, the style, the genre, the meaning, the subtext, that you can help yourself to find the pacing for the tempo of the opening of a sonata like Schubert's. And if the student feels playing, I don't reject. I say, what think about this length of sound? The repeated notes, almost like a heartbeat in the accompaniment. So yes, you can give imagination ideas through analogies, but ultimately it's what only the music itself is and how you play it. If you put a pedal on each note, you obtain a legato, but it's lifting all the dampers. You have a resonance that is no more focused on the note that you sing individually, like a singer would sing with syllables. I would like to dance with you, or something, even silly lyrics, but meaning something that goes somewhere, like a sentence, not just a series of notes that have to be aesthetically well placed, clean together and in place, because that is a given, but it shouldn't be the arrival point of it. Of course, if you play a fingering that makes you slip, then you want to avoid it, because this is the ultimate disgrace. Oh my God, this piece I love so much. What did I do in all these hours of practice? Why didn't the teacher give me a better fingering? So my idea is to give them fingerings that allow them to be reliable when nervous, or reliable when facing a complex texture that the composer composed, not necessarily piano-friendly, to say the least, like Beethoven's sonatas have this kind of polyphony that is made beyond or through the piano to imitate orchestra, opera, something else. And so, of course, you can use pedals and you can use all artifices that help you to reach, match, hold, shape, sculpt the text. And therefore, why I call it swim against the tide is because the golden rules about shaping the dynamic ranges with very clearly defined subtlety of dynamic ranges that go from fortissimo to pianissimo, through mezzo pianissimo, mezzo piano, piano, mezzo forte, forte, mezzo fortissimo, fortissimo. In other words, not forte and piano with a mezzo in the middle, but so many more nuances that you have to control through your touch because you want, or because you wish, or because you can. And if you are afraid that you can't, then you can diminish and simplify by just playing loud and then soft. But in between, there are so many things that you have to plan, organize when you practice in order to deliver it. If the music says, Mozart has this surprising dissonances, accents, expression of elements that you have to find, not just to say correctly said, but also involved, said involvedly, involved. The suspensions, this chromatic descent, this sense of delay, of hope, and then the constant pump of the dominant in the left hand, that is the ostinato. Okay, I can say all these things, and I just did. But when I play them, how much do I imply them? Do I over-involve myself when I play? Do I under-involve myself when I play? Like watching it pass? Or do I immerse myself in the statement? And to which extent subjectivity is overly wrong and objectivity is overly wrong too. And what is the right involvement in the piece? Dynamics, ranges, pedals, phrasing, quality of legato. You can over legato, or just speak it, each note, spoken legato of sorts, or then, or a separation on each note, or some. Of course, the editions give you the beam, and you know if it's supposed to be slurred as a direction or a legato for the slur, but then is it over legato? Mezzo pianissimo? Or mezzo forte? And how the accompaniment in this Chopin nocturne combines with the melody, how it nourishes it, how it's not just a melody imitating the voice and the accompaniment imitating the harp, the guitar, or some instrument that accompanies it, because it's very simple, but that beauty of it is like in Satie. The simple beauty, poetically speaking, compared to the complexity of a Bach fugue. So it's a different texture, and you can dive into it, sink into it, or survive into it. But if you separate from it and you find a technique that allows you to be reliable every time you play it, then you avoid taking risks, because substitution of the fingers changes the balance of the hand, so you can slip on the wrong note. But if you play separate notes with the pedal holding them in connection, You obtain a very nice sound if you have a good acoustic and a brand new piano which has good balance because the keys are all even in the action. So yes, it's more than a philosophical question. Do I implement the golden rules of piano technique, touch, control to my students? Or do I make them search within their own capacity of performing? Even the choices of interpretation evolve. That is a beautiful thing. Everybody, students themselves, beautifully inspire me by bringing me the pieces I seem to know for half a century, but all of a sudden I rediscover them. So it becomes a dialogue, respectful and analytical, but also intuitive. And that's how I hear it. That's how I love it. And I cannot think of it beyond this tempo or this phrasing or this articulation. And what does it matter ultimately? Because it does matter. And I think that if audiences who love to listen to classical music are informed about the capacity that the piano can be played at for a specific element of singing in this case, and how you can sing legato with the finger legato without the dampers up and therefore having a more dry resonance, but at the same time more meaningful connection of the sounds rather than all the sounds resonating by sympathy. And it's an aesthetic. And you can argue and disagree. And of course, students don't have to obey, and they don't. They leave the room after the lesson, and then they live their life with this piece for their own seasons of life ahead with it. And that's wonderful. They'll teach it in turn, they'll record it, or they'll perform it, they'll audition with it, they'll compete with it, or they'll forget it, or they'll pick it up later, and they'll see what it might have meant then to them and how it means to them now. And regardless of what it meant to the teacher, because we are here at different seasons of our lives between teachers and students within the same pieces and how we approach them. And so we can like or dislike, that's okay. But understand, misunderstand, that's also. But to bring to fruition what it means to us to play the way we like it to sound. And if we appreciate what it means to play legato by the finger versus the pedal, and if it means to us enough to search to how to control it so we can be reliable while doing that. If we want to play mezzo pianissimo legato, whispered intensity rather than mezzo forte with unicorda left pedal that makes it softer. Because it's more apparently more reliable, but not necessarily. If you practice it, you obtain it. Perhaps not 100%, but close to, if it brings you the satisfaction that the audience will appreciate an inner voice spoken line which brings a highlighting to the text, and you feel like, oh, this pianist brought this to me in this piece, the other one I don't know what I'm missing. You're not supposed to know the words of the book that people are reading to you as an audio book, which is what really a pianist is when they play a concert, unless the people know the piece, in which case anyway they disagree with you at the get-go because they prefer it their way. But you cannot match everybody's way, you just match your way. And if your way is to expect the most of yourself, then yes, you can. You should try. And perhaps the audiences will then appreciate, agree or disagree, that you have a certain capacity to do it. And I try to help my students by teaching them these golden rules of piano playing, because it was appreciated and meaningful to pianists from, let's say, at least the end of the 19th century until at least the middle of the 20th century. We have all these recordings to prove it. It's really strikingly meaningful, even if it's swimming against the tide, and humbling, because there isn't one way or my way. It's whatever it means deeply to each of us to express through our art form or our craftsmanship. And I do my best to bring the tools to my students so they can express themselves for what it means to them. Thank you.